agencies all over about cultural awareness in their job place right now. And also my wife and I have a consulting business together as far as essential oils, and we teach people how to use essential oils all over the United States, and we travel instead of using regular drugs. And so I have also been very active in Jacksonville from the time that I moved back. I've been involved from the Conference of Churches all the way to the Well Center. Actually, at one time, I was on 17 different boards where most people know me. And I still am very active. I'm a CASA. For those of you who know what CASA is, I'm a CASA volunteer, which 2 weeks ago that I was sworn in by Judge Tobin. And so I've always been a child advocate. I've always worked to make sure that Jacksonville was a place that people wanted to live, that could live comfortably, because most people in Jacksonville really don't understand that comparably to every place else around the world. We live in a gated community where we can actually walk around and we can feel safe and we can talk to each other and we can have those conversations. But you have to go other places in order to appreciate home. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you, John. Louis, sir?
Well, I also want to thank you for inviting me today, and I also want to just add this little bit. I really appreciate the fact of prayer before the meeting, because as a pastor, you know, I really like to see that happening not only in churches but also in the community. A little bit about myself. My full name is Louis Herbert Eason III, you know, so you'll see that on the signs around town. I live at 17 Forest Park East here in Jacksonville, and I have been here now about 22 years. Let me add that this is probably the second longest place that I have ever lived in my entire life. Prior to this, I lived in a little town in New York called Gowanda, around Lackawanna, Tonawanda. Wanda was a busy girl in that part of town. But I was there for about 6 years, I guess you could say, and before that I never lived anywhere other than maybe 3.5 years. I have 7 children, 1 in Nova Scotia, 2 in Texas, 1 in, actually 2 now in Detroit, that area, 1 in Lansing, Michigan, and 1 in, North Carolina. So I get to travel a lot during the summertime. My education basically is I have an Associate of Arts degree from Highland Park Community College in Highland Park, Michigan, which is now closed. A Bachelor's Arts degree from Wayne State University, where I majored in history and also education, secondary education. A master's degree from Andover Theological School, where I received my ministerial standing. And lastly, a Doctor of Ministry from Texas Christian University. I have had many experiences in life, and it's kind of hard to put them all together. But I have lived in 12 states. I have been in, at one time or another, all 50 of our states, including Alaska, Hawaii, and also the territory of Guam. I have been in the military. I served in the military as an enlisted guy for 5 years, and then another 19 years as a chaplain. I have, in coming to this particular part of the world, I have been the chaplain at Illinois College for about 12 years, and some of you may know some of the work that I've done with the college groups. One of the things I used to do is take college students to visit around town here to the various churches. I started a group there called the Coalition for Ethnic Awareness, which was to build up diversity in the college and get them aware of the different cultures, and many other groups. But I've also served in different categories or positions here in town. I was one time a Kiwanian. I was on the YMCA board. I also was working on the board at Gateway, just to name a few things. I have now retired from full-time pastorate, and I am now working part-time with the Fitness World Gym as a senior citizen instructor and also a yoga instructor. And I am also still working with the Air Force, with the Civil Air Patrol, which is an affiliated of the Air Force. So every once in a while, you'll see me in uniform, shaved and shined and all of that stuff. And I do emergency service work with the Civil Air Patrol. I'm a member of First Christian Church, and I am also with the American Legion. I think that's enough.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Todd?
Wow, I'm surrounded by a lot of great people up here. This is awesome. My name is Todd Warrick. I'm a candidate for South Jacksonville trustee. I'm married to my wife Cindy. We both have 4 children. 2 of them are both here in this. 2 of them are in the area. Her daughter is over in Mount Zion, and her son is over in Saudi Arabia with the Air Force. I've been a resident for over 40 years. I started out in the Illinois Army National Guard as a medic. When I was released from active duty, I went and started my career, continuing that medic career with St. John's Hospital in the emergency room, which at the time was the biggest and busiest trauma center south of Chicago. For a little guy graduating from Ashland High School, that was a big eye-opener for me. After that, I resigned in 1989, where I accepted a position with the Jacksonville Fire Department. I served a 25-year career there, retiring at the rank of lieutenant. In 2007 on the fire department, I was Illinois Firefighting Medal of Honor recipient. I currently work at Reynolds Consumer Products and Human Resources, where I do pre-placement physicals. I also work with Environmental Health and Safety, where I train the plant emergency organization, teaching them first aid. We do unannounced drills, things like that. And it's actually the first Reynolds that does these plant emergency organization drills. I do have a strong faith in God. Me and my wife both do. We are members of First Christian Church. I am the sheepdog ministry leader. We're both ambassadors there. I was the volunteer of the year in 2014. My career with the fire department was very active. I was on the Firemen's Pension Board as a trustee. There I was the Freedom of Information Act officer and Open Meetings Act officer. I was also involved with ESDA with the WeatherNet. If you don't know what the WeatherNet is, if you're coming into the village or the city and you see a sign that says you're a storm-safe community, that's what the WeatherNet does for you. Also, I work with NOAA as a weather-ready ambassador for Reynolds Consumer Products, where I teach weather safety. I am a NOAA weather observer. I was Treasurer Jacksonville Firefighters Local 637, Treasurer of the Lincoln Land Professional Firefighters Association, which was comprised of 5 professional fire departments in the area. Also, when I was on the fire department, I was very active with the legislative board. And I was honored to work with all the legislative members that going up to the state capitol and passing a lot of bills that have to do with the fire department. I am endorsed by Sam McCann. He has been working with me on this campaign here. And I live by my motto, work hard and be humble.
Thank you. Thank you, women in our community, for caring to attend and participate in our democracy. I'm Brandon Adams, and I'm running for the 2-year term for Ward 3 Alderman. There are many things I'd like to share with you tonight, so I'll try to keep it short. 5 years ago, after a welding job in North Dakota, a mosquito bit me and gave me West Nile. That put me in a 2-month coma. Upon awakening, things changed. I had many complications to deal with, health-wise and financially. This is what began my journey on disability. As soon as I was able, I moved to Beecher High Rise late 2016. I continued my journey of rehabilitation utilizing the Ticket to Work program through Social Security Disability, as well as the Department of Rehabilitation Services of Illinois Vocational Training Program. These programs that I'm currently enrolled in have started to give me a second chance to work again, from a welder to a certified welding inspector. From AWS, American Welding Society. I've achieved endorsements this past year on pipeline, structural steel, aerospace, and just received bridge welding endorsement. I enjoy participating in our local democracy as the 9th Precinct Committeeman to inform voters about elections and get out the vote. I also became an official registrar to enroll new participants in our democracy. I am proud the 9th Precinct had the highest voter turnout in our recent local 2019 primary election. I started participating as soon as I was able by being a public attendee to the city council meetings for the past few years. I've made public comments to the mayor and the council about making change to help our citizens. None of the 10 aldermen are poor or disabled like myself. Half of America and Jacksonville is low income, 30,000 a year or less, so half of the council should be, but none are. I'm trying to make it one voice on the council representing half of our community, and that's why I'm running for office.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Eren White-Williams. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I don't have near as impressive resume as everybody else. Oh, pull it forward. There we go. Anyways, I'm running for Ward 1 Alderman. I am uncontested, so as long as I get that one vote, I think I will represent Ward 1 really well. I'm an average person. I don't try to put on airs. My family didn't have a ton of money, but my dad always worked really hard. He went to the factory and worked forever at Lundy and Myers when they were still here. I've lived in Ward 1 all my life, actually. I was born not too many blocks away. I went to Jefferson School. My daughter went to Lincoln. My son goes to Lincoln right now. That's in Ward 1 as well. I was in the class of 98. I had to pull back and get other schooling, private schooling, because in 1995 I was in a really bad car wreck. It kept me in St. John's for quite a few months. I busted up my whole eye socket here, so if I ever stumble with my words or stumble, please forgive me. It's really hard to talk in public. I've had many failed spinal cord surgeries, so I've been going to a lot of physical therapy lately. I have 2 kids. My daughter's 19, her name's Kira, and my son is 6, so it's Stephen Jr. I won backyard chickens actually about 3 or 4 years ago. Well, I had a lot of help with it. I decided that I wanted chickens, and the rules that they had in place for Jacksonville were just past due. There was no reason people couldn't have a few little hens. And so we worked with the city, and we got it all figured out, and now people can have chickens in their backyard. So I kept going to the meetings every now and then when my son would allow me to, and I've gotten interested in it. I ran for council, it was about 3 years ago now, and I was only a handful of votes away from winning it my first time. And so this time I'm lucky I don't have to run against anyone. Let me see. I run resale groups online. I am a member of the STEAM show. I love the STEAM show. We, for the last few years, have been dragging our stuff up there and been a vendor. I work with wildlife. I help with little rehabilitators. I'm working to get my license if I get enough hours, which you need a lot of hours to get your license. But I want to help rescue wildlife. And other than that, I'm a homemaker and a wife. So that's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to thank you again for having us. My name is Stacy Pinkerton. I live here in the village, South Jacksonville. I'm married. I have 3 kids, 6 grandkids. I have a bachelor's degree in business, and I'm currently on the board of trustees.
Thank you guys for having us. My name is Jenn Slavin. I'm running for Village of South Jacksonville trustee. I've lived in Jacksonville for 13 years, South Jacksonville for 6. Carrie and I have been together for 6 years as well. We have a 3-year-old son, Harrison. I am currently the manager at Fastenal Company, which is an industrial supply company in Jacksonville. I've also been on Eason Foundation, which is a charity organization, as the secretary for a few years. And I graduated from VHS. I've lived in Utah, Tennessee, Wyoming, and I'm here to stay in Illinois for a while. So,
Great.
what's that?
All right, everyone. My name's Chris Norton. I'm running for one of the spots for Village of South Jacksonville. I live in the village. I've lived in the village for 17 years. I work at Nestle. I've worked there for 21 years. I have a lovely wife and a son. I've been married for 24 years. My son is now 23. A little bit more about myself is I've been with the 18 M&M Foundation. It's a charity group. I've been the president on that. ABATE of Illinois. I was the president for our Tri-County chapter in Jacksonville. Other than that, I'm here to run for the board. I've been on the board for almost a year now.
That's great. Okay, thank you. I think that's all the candidates that we have here. Thank you very much. I mean, it was just a wealth of information and I'm really, like a lot of you on the panel, I'm really impressed by all of the work, qualifications, and the interest in our Jacksonville and South Jacksonville community. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with the questions, and what we're going to do, the candidates have a slip, they were sent the questions in the mail, and also we have them in front of them. And I think what we're going to do, it's two questions that they have, and then we're going to hold the questions and answers so everyone gets done. I have some pink slips over there where people can, if they don't have anything to write down a question for a candidate, they can. But I think we're just going to wait till everybody gets through. That way we will have, everybody get an opportunity to speak. The two questions are that we are going to ask, and just a great introduction for everyone here, lots of wealth of background and experience. But the two questions are, in your position, if elected or re-elected, what issue you feel needs to be addressed? And the second question to that is, what do you hope to accomplish in your tenure or term? And basically, it's just the two questions, and we're going to go with each candidate if you want to try to answer those. And if people have questions for a candidate, we'll go ahead and after we get done, go ahead and we'll address those. So, we'll go ahead and start. Thank you.
Kind of tough going first, but anyway.
I thought about going backwards, but.
Well, that's all right with me if you want to do that.
Give you guys a break.
Some issues I think, that are going to be facing the city in the coming years is obviously the finances. As finance chairman, I'm probably described best by my council members who say I'm tighter than a bark on a tree when it comes to the tax dollars, which I am. I don't like to spend money on things that we don't have money to spend on. The economic development is going to be facing this. We've got store closings. We're losing jobs. We need to work very closely with JREDC to retain the jobs we have and the industries we have, to create new job opportunities for the city. Public safety is another issue. I want to make sure that our fire department and our police department have the necessary equipment and the necessary training to perform their duties. Infrastructure and property maintenance is another issue. After this winter, our streets are really in bad shape. It's going to take a lot of money to fix those streets. A lot of potholes out there. Property maintenance, we need to be very aggressive in keeping our properties clean around the city. Other than that, as finance chairman, I'm very interested in maintaining the city in the black, always operating in the black. I'm really concerned about the quality of life here in Jacksonville. And like everybody else, education, taxes, property maintenance, you're going to hear every one of those things mentioned. We try to do the best we can. The city council, the present city council, and the administration work very diligently to provide those services to the community. And, other than that, I'm going to do the same thing I've done for the last 8 years, and that's to ensure the safety and the welfare of the citizens of this community and to make sure that we have the finances to provide the services that are necessary. The wants will come later, but the needs are first. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What I hope to do and address, we're losing a lot of people in this city due to loss of jobs, due to some state issues that are outside the city's control. But the one thing that I believe that's inside the city's control is our property taxes. I think they're too high. I've been hearing this off and on all week as I went door to door in my ward. My property taxes have gone up several times. I hope to accomplish at least a property tax freeze because we have people leaving the city, but yet our budget continues to grow here at the city. I'd like to be more transparent with the spending that has taken place so that our property tax dollars are being spent wisely, fixing those roads, fixing the sewers. Ward 2 has some of the worst roads and some of the worst sewers in town, next to Ward 1, I do believe. I'd like to see some of that development come east. I've currently been working with private citizens. I don't know if you watch on Facebook, but been working with private citizens to bring Target here. I've been in contact with Target to fill up that empty space that Shopko is going to be leaving for us. Also been in contact with Hy-Vee and several other businesses. So I'm taking the personal initiative, whether I'm elected to this board or not, to bring business back to the city and bring jobs here. Last but not least, I do believe that public safety is a big issue, and I think that Jacksonville does a wonderful job with the staff that it has. I want to ensure that it continues to do that. I would like to both protect our policemen and firemen as well as our citizens moving forward. But right now, I think that all hinges on the property tax problem, keeping people in the city, keeping jobs in the city, and keeping finances tight so that we're not overspending what we're promising. Thank you.
Like Don said, you're going to hear the same themes over and over tonight. Sometimes it's good to be the first, and then if you're not, you sound like you're just repeating what's already been said. I think one of our most important things we have to do in Jacksonville is to take steps to spur economic growth. We need to keep the jobs that we have, and we need to do the things that are necessary to make people want to move to Jacksonville, to come to Jacksonville. And of course, taxes are a big part of that. Nobody likes to pay their property taxes. I don't either. The truth of the matter is that things keep getting more expensive. Services, what we pay for services, those continue to grow, and if we don't take the steps to maintain a first-rate fire department, a first-rate police department, and train them and equip them, nobody's going to move to Jacksonville if they don't think it's a safe community. I think that's a priority for us, is making sure Jacksonville is a safe community for people who live here now and who look to move here and bring jobs. When they start looking at a place, that's one of the first things they look at. The infrastructure, the city utilities, those types of things. And those all do cost money. Yes, we want to do it with the least possible amount we can and do our due diligence to make sure that the money is spent where it should be, as it should be, and in a physically responsible manner. Thank you. Thank you. When we talk about the city of Jacksonville and our wards, we have to realize that in order to be effective as an alderman, you have to have a relationship not only with the people that are within the city generally, but also your ward, and you have to have it with the businesses that are in Jacksonville. You have to be involved in Jacksonville in order to effectively network and help where one person one group is falling short, that you know another group that can help them. The things I find that are the biggest issues in Jacksonville are things that back in 2008 I saw in other parts of the country. And I've been the chairman of the Public Protection Committee for the last 14 years. And so when I hear the other aldermen talk about protection for our community, one of the biggest issues that the nation is facing right now is fire and police pensions. In the good days, when people had a lot of money, cities had a lot of money, they paid a lot of money to allure people to be within those groups to come to their city. But what they found later was they didn't keep up by paying current on their fire and pension plan. And even if you go to Springfield right now, one of the biggest issues that they're talking about right to this day is they're going to lose jobs on the fire department, on the police department, and other parts of the city because of the burden that the fire and police pension have cost. So going back forward, what I see as the biggest thing is we just have to be fiscally responsible in Jacksonville as far as making sure that we stay ahead of it. And we, as a city council, are ahead of it right now. When we took the levy, people also said, well, Tony, you're raising taxes. But what they fail to realize is that as other entities and cities are doing now, they're taxing their people to death just because they didn't do the proper things in the time period that they should have at the very beginning. They kept passing that burden on, and now the burden has gotten to the point where it's way out of kilter, and people are starting to lose jobs. We don't want that for Jacksonville. We look ahead, we try to do the best we can and be fiscally responsible. Also, infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, you have to have money in order to do infrastructure properly. I live on a street that doesn't have gutters, never has in the history of Jacksonville, has curbs, and I live on Richard Street, so I understand what it is in not having curbs. But also at the same time, I think the city is working hard to maintain some of the roads. But fire pension and police, to stay ahead of that and the cost is one of the big things. Bringing jobs to Jacksonville, understanding the process is that I can sit up here and tell you that I'm going to bring jobs to Jacksonville, and I would be only teasing you in a sense, is because it's a process. It's the JREDC that brings businesses to Jacksonville, not the city council. Why we can sit up here and say, well, look, I'm going to bring Google to Jacksonville. I may have that big idea and you may go along with it, but the reality of it is we don't make those decisions. I try to be very open to the constituents, not only in the city, but in my ward. So just as today, a person called me and said, how could I help them? Trying to help everyone that has a need in Jacksonville and trying to say which need is important, because I don't know about you, but if I have a need, my need is more important than my neighbors. Trying to help everyone and making sure that we do the right things and make sure that this is a safe environment, that you can go to the parks and you can enjoy yourself. You can go to the dog parks. You can go to the paths that we're creating now, out to the lake. You can do all those things and do them freely. So I want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible, that we give you a very good place to live in, and it's some place that the children will come back. I came back after 20-some years to Jacksonville with the opportunity to go other places. But you know what? There's no place like home. And so I want to make sure that it's always that way. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Louis?
Two things real quick. First of all, I think I'm probably maybe one of the oldest, if not the oldest guy up here. I have 15 grandchildren.
I nod to you. Right?
Okay. I'm going to beat the same drum a little bit, okay? And I brought an article that was published in the Courier on March the 2nd of this year, and it says something like this. I have to find a spot here. Oh, yeah. Southern Illinois University at Carbondale poll from 2015 showed that half of the Illinois residents polled would leave the state if they could. The number one reason stated was taxes. Another point with that is the fact that the birth rate and the immigration rates fail to make up for the growing outflow of residents, not only in the state of Illinois, but also in the city of Jacksonville. I've looked up some statistics. I found that the population loss in Jacksonville from 2017 to about 2000 was 1,537 residents. That's something like about 90 or more residents a year. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but that's a lot of people leaving. If taxes is the problem, obviously, it's got something to do with our property tax. There's no getting around it. Jacksonville, Illinois is currently 7.7% smaller than it was in the year 2000, the year of its peak recorded population. In addition, Jacksonville, Illinois' growth is extremely below the 89% of the rest of the state. So there are some problems with growth. But growth is a complicated problem. But let me just kind of speed on a little bit. I'm not against increased taxes. I don't think anyone here thinks that you can run a city or any budget without some kind of tax increase. However, I think it's very important that we find a way to meet the needs not only of the city, but the individual residents here in this city. For instance, the council needs to be not only mindful of and transparent about the raises that they make for taxes, but they also need to be concerned for our senior citizens, because Jacksonville is graying. It means that we are beginning to have more senior citizens that are overtaking the younger citizens, and we got a problem with that. For example, monthly Social Security and SSI benefits for over 65 million Americans decreased by only 3.3%. And in 2017, 2.8%, largely because of the Trump tax program. I don't know. I think with this tax program, we need to be transparent. We need to be frugal. In fact, my wife says, I'm so tight sometimes. If you know what's on a dime, I can squeeze that dime so hard that Truman would be put back into the White House. I think that's the way we need to be when it comes to our taxes in terms of the city. Now, I just want to say not only that, but it's a very difficult thing. Downtown looks great. Downtown projects have been great. When we go out to the lake and all of that, and the new path that's being built or added on to, I think to myself, wow, that's really great. But I don't fish, I don't hunt, and I'm too old to walk. So I got a problem. So the other side of it is that we talk about the improvements to roads. It really is tough. You can say that you can take pride in the city, but you need pride in the neighborhoods. So I've kind of developed a different view. I would say Main Street is great, but my street is also a concern. We need to be concerned about the sidewalks. We need to be concerned about what we can do. And how do we do that? I have some plans, some ideas of how we can approach that and maybe bring this problem under control. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but basically that's where I'm at. And I hope to be able to bring my experience in terms of world travels, world point of view into the council and share some of those ideas, and we can get together and not work against each other, but together with each other to come up with what I consider a strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
All right, I'm the first one from the village. That's awesome. Sorry, I like to stand up and talk.
That's great.
If if elected, what issues would I like to address? Number one is jobs. Everybody's saying that. Number two would be the water system. And number three would be the fire department. So how do we go about that? How do we take the issue of jobs? The village sits on 40 acres out by JREDC. It's called Village Site. It was up for sale in 2016, and it didn't sell because Village Board couldn't come up to a price on what they wanted to sell for. It was a good idea. But the land could be used for something better than farming. If anyone around my age remembers the Eastgate Industrial Complex out by the prison, how it started out with one road and one building. And look at it now. 25 years later, it's full of businesses, it's full of jobs, it's brought jobs in, it's brought a lot of employees in. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that I can do by myself. If I said I was going to do it by myself, I'd be lying. It's going to take a group effort. It's going to take the entire board to do this, along with JREDC and the community to support that. The other thing is the water supply system. The water tower that's out there is talking to John Green. It's at least 50 years old. We don't know the age on it. And it's a 250,000 gallon water tank. They go through a 250,000 gallon water tank twice a day. So it fills up, it's used, fills up, it's used again. That's a lot of water. Going back through the records with him through 2002, which as far as we could go back, before he had to get on the microfilms, I'm not going to do that because I don't know if I remember how to use those. The water supply went up 60% from 2002 to 2018. Water usage went up 60%. The village since 1970 has grown 12%, but if you look out from 1970, what has developed out all around there, it's actually exploded, and there's still room to build out there. So the infrastructure has to build with it. What size of tank would have to be there, that would be up to John, that would be up to the engineers. When they were developing Loves, they did set aside, 2-3 acres, and they did stub off the water line. That they are ready to do that. It's just going to take the board and the support of the people to do that. As far as the fire department, it's a great fire department. It's volunteer. You'll see some of the best, well-trained paramedics on that department in the area. Bar none. I've worked in this area for 25 years. I've worked with them, so I can say that. That being said, they have the capability of having 30 members, and they're down to 15. How do you address that? Number one, it's hard to get volunteers anymore. Getting jobs here, keeping people here, it's small town America almost. What I would like to see done is you make a hybrid fire department. You have 2 personnel on duty all the time that are paramedics, or 1 paramedic and 1 EMT that can run an ambulance. And how do you pay for that? You build an ambulance. When I was crunching some numbers down, figured that somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 could be brought into the city if they transported half the people of the calls that they went on. They do have an ambulance. It probably needs to be upgraded if they're going to do that. But that's my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Brandon?
Thank you. It looks like jobs and taxes is number 1 and number 2. I'm not sure which is which yet, but I kind of see them both as related, and unlike the rest of the people, I think that if we look at how I've sat in that stand and spoke right out here and spoke up this way to anybody that would listen on council about what it's doing to affect the low-income working families of the community. And as far as jobs and taxes go, we could look at raising the minimum wage on corporations that are out of state, multi-state corporations that have over 500 employees, like namely Walmart and Home Depot and some others. There's already a $15 minimum wage written into Illinois' law by 2025, but we need it now. And we could do that now and not have to raise property taxes, which every council member up here has done, which is not fiscally conservative. That's the opposite of that. And so I've looked at things like that, as well as speaking out about the wasteful spending on the golf course from $100,000 annually last year to $150,000. However, my decision would be different if the citizens got a return on our investment from our taxes to the golf course. Also, the fact that we're spending our tax dollars in those wasteful ways that could be helping infrastructure has been one of the top things that I have been concerned about. Living at Beecher High Rise and talking to the residents there, we have to use the laundry room, and now we have to go get quarters from Dunlap Liquors because our office quit giving us quarters, and the bank next to us, you have to have an account. So there's people in wheelchairs and walkers that are riding up the street to Dunlap without any crosswalks because the crumbling sidewalk next to Strawn's Art Gallery. I've talked to the people at the labor homes in across from Prairie Land and the state hospital there, and they're in the same boat. They don't have a sidewalk for any of their handicapped or disabled people. So there's many things that we could be using the tax dollars that are being spent in other ways for things of our community that help our people and our infrastructure, and that's what I think is most important.
Well, thank you very much, Brandon.
Okay, this is a two-part question, but I really think it's one question. What needs to be addressed and what do I want to do? Well, I want to do what needs to be addressed. Jobs, everybody's going to say jobs, of course, but I want jobs like we used to have that you could live off of when you used to be able to work at Lundy or EMI. And we still have a few places, but no job that you can actually live off of, only having to do that one job. And jobs where you shouldn't have to work 12 plus hours and swing shifts and regular good jobs. Even the bookbindery, it's not sustainable anymore. I have many family members that work at the bookbinderies here in town, and you can't just live off that alone. And you work your knuckles to the bone. So there's the jobs part. I think also the other issues is the drains. On my side of town, on the northeast side, they're all clogged with nothing but trash, which is my third problem. There is nothing but trash everywhere in this town. If you go behind Circle K and look, there's just litter everywhere. Behind on Norton, there's trash everywhere. I was told maybe we could get some help from some prisoners or some kind of a workforce to come in and clean it, but we really need to figure out a way how to clean it up. It just looks terrible. And anybody who comes here sees it and they're like, what's going on? I agree with the whole getting Target here, because we do need other jobs. We need more than just Walmart to shop at and Maurice's, which are both okay stores, but that's all we have anymore. I would love to see a better sit-down family restaurant if we could talk to somebody and see if getting maybe a small Golden Corral, who knows, or an Old Navy store. We've got many little shopettes where we could put something popular. I just really think that we need to work on the sidewalks. That's a big one. When my son was a baby, I used to try and walk him around, and you have to almost walk in the street because the sidewalks are tilted like this. They're crumbling, they're falling apart, and it just looks terrible. And I think that we should want good for every single ward in Jacksonville because it makes the other wards look better. So that's what I do. I want to listen and learn a lot my first year or two and try and help the city as much as I can. And that's it. Thank you.
First thing I would like to say, the very first time I ran, transparency was a big deal. I like to say that the board of South Jacksonville has came a long way. We tried to work together and make things better for the people in the village. So one of the biggest things I think we need to work on is the spending. I think on our budget we need to cut back. We have had a lot of purchases, large sums of purchase, I should say, vehicles and other things that I think that we need to sit back and maybe the next budget kind of just watch our spending. Property maintenance, we have a lot of properties there now that has a lot of junk cars, a lot of what I want to say, yards that just need to be cleaned up. So I think that's a big thing that also needs to be done. Ditches. I don't know how many times we have to hear it, and every trustee hears it all the time. When it rains, the ditches are full. So that's one of our biggest things we need to work on is getting those ditches cleaned up so we can take care of the drainage. The one thing I would like to see, it was almost like Todd's, I'd like to see a full-time ambulance. We have a wonderful, like you said, fire department, but I think that we could use a full-time ambulance. We have labor drive that really depends on our ambulance. So I'd like to, of course it's not gonna be done right away. I mean, it's gonna take a lot, from the board, but that's what I think that should be done.
Thank you. Stacy?
Okay, some issues that I think that needs to be addressed. First, our water rates. We hear a lot of complaints with that. I think we need to work on lowering those because I believe that we are a lot higher than Jacksonville. Second, maintenance and fixing the potholes, the roads, ditches, adding sidewalks. But the problem with that is like Stacy said, our budget right now is so tight. So in order for that to make those things happen, I think we need to attract businesses by using the resources we have to expand and improve our roads, which in turn would open new areas for development, for houses, for new businesses, which would create revenue for the village and the citizens. The last thing, which I think is a big thing, is teamwork. I think teamwork is very, very key. Teamwork between the trustees, the mayor, and the department heads, which opens lines of communication. I think with that, with the lines of communication being open, I think that we can be more effective, get things done quicker and in a timely manner. Going to Village Hall during business hours, looking at paperwork, I think that we could get things done quicker and be more effective by doing that.
Thanks, Jen. Last but not least, Chris.
Yeah, it's pretty tough being the last person. Most everything's been talked about. So, I mean, really, the village has a tight budget itself anyway. So, I mean, that's one of our concerns. And we want to make the village more attractive. And some of the things that we have done is the school program that we've worked on, rebuilding the roads around the school. We've been working great with Godfrey Park, trying to make it more beautiful and handicap accessible, and doing a lot of work there. And of course, like everyone else has said, maintain the streets and the ditches and stuff like that. That all has to be done with money, but we're on a tight budget. I wouldn't want to get a loan or anything like that and raise people's taxes. That's not what we're here to do. We need to look at other things like the TIF program, our motor fuel tax, stuff like that. And that's one of the things we're going to look into.
Okay, well, thank you. I wish everybody did a great job, a lot of common themes. Let's give our candidates a hand. You did a great job, and I appreciate it. What we're going to do next is, I just want to, when we get done, we're going to have questions and answers, but some of the candidates have brought their material, and it's out there on the table out there. So we'll open it up for questions and see if anyone has any questions for the council members. Yes. If you want to go up, or your voice is loud.
I'm Sandy Winter. I live in Ward 3 and have been there for about 39 years. And I have a question to the two aldermen that are running for alderman. What is your position on maintaining property maintenance in particularly our area? There are several homes that the lawns, they're parking in the front yard, the porches are full of trash. And we've been trying for 2 years to get things cleaned up in our neighborhood. It's not working.
So a lot of problems that come around are from poverty. 25 of the problems that are related to poverty, like disease and crime, and those things are directly related to poverty. So that's what I was saying about increasing the minimum wage to help people from the bottom up. We have to start looking at all our community. Like I said, there's 0 of the 10 council members that are poor, like myself, which is $15,000 a year on SSDI or disabled. So having that voice on the council would at least be able to tell people that to give the other half of Jacksonville that makes $30,000 or less a voice on the council. In cases like these, that we're looking at the property value, because if we don't start improving our community, all of our property value is going to decrease, not just because of the neighbors, because the neighbor's poor. That's something that, because I live in Beecher, is very close to me. Everybody there, not half of them, everybody there is low income or poor. And so, taking care of that situation by taking care of our community from the bottom up first is exactly why I'm running for office. Thank you for that question.
It is a problem in our ward, and it's not just in our ward. I can talk to any of the aldermen or any of you here. There are places in every ward where we have maintenance problems. Don brought it up when he was talking. There is a process that you can go through with the city to do that. I think for a lot of people, and I understand Sandy, she said for 2 years she's been working on things and stuff. And we have a Department of Inspections in the city. It has 2 full-time inspectors with it. The process starts when somebody, a citizen, files a complaint with them about the property. And after that complaint is filed, then it goes through, and here's the key phrase, due process. Hands are tied to a degree that you can't just go in and say, hey, you've got to clean that property up, or we're going to come in and do it for you. There's a process that has to go through the legal steps and everything. Once that process goes through and that takes place, then it goes to the municipal court to be handled by the judge there. So in essence, you're kind of taking the city out of the situation, because the judge then determines what's going to happen with that property. Are they going to work with the landlord? Are they going to work with the tenant or the situation to get it taken care of? And I think in many cases, Sandy, that the municipal court is somewhat lenient. They would rather not charge people, not do things, try to work with them to get them going. And that's something we probably need to look at, is that system and that due process system, and make people more aware of that. But when I talked to them in the inspections department, they said the one key thing is, if you have a problem near you, you need to file that complaint, because that gets the whole thing going and started and stuff. And then hopefully if those things are done, then we can work to follow that process through, see what's happening with it, and not just say, well, we started it and let it go. Try to keep track of those. I think at any time in the city, there's maybe 30 to 50 of those going on at a time that we don't even know about. You'd think nothing's happening, but there are things going through, that are happening and stuff. And it's a process, and nobody likes for that process to take very long. But I am committed to working with the Citizens of Ward 3 on getting those properties maintained and doing what we can to upgrade those. And I think with all the other wards, it's the same thing. Every ward has those properties and stuff. And it's just a case of, we need to sit down, understand that process, and work within it. And if there's steps we can take to enhance that process, then to do those things. But we have to keep in mind, there's 10 aldermen. One alderman can't do it. He has to work in conjunction with the other aldermen. Just like with the trustees in South Jacksonville, you have the same problems. One person can't do it. It's important to build relationships with the other aldermen and work with them to get those things done. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment and have a question. I would like to say on the messy yard response that the messy yard is the symptom. As Adams was saying, the problem is poverty. Poverty is what is causing the symptom. If we provide more opportunity to the individuals in poverty, we are less likely to have the messy yard occurrences. So by targeting the factor of poverty and having these individuals gain more oversight into how their yard is obstructed to the community, then those individuals will more likely recognize that it's a problem and take care of it themselves. That's a problem with just our American culture in general, is we try to cover up the symptoms instead of taking care of the actual problem. And I would like to ask each individual candidate, just like in a 30-second brief, what specific item will be your primary targets to reduce our current level of expenditures, starting with our current alderman now and working our way through our candidates.
Repeat that again.
So, what specific item will be your primary target to reduce our current level of expenditures?
Yeah, whoever wants to enter, why don't we just have whoever wants to.
Okay, yeah, that's good too.
Do
Whoever
that
wants
and
to.
try to answer it. Yes, Tony?
I think that you have to look at, prioritize things. You can't just say, how am I going to cut things? Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to cut them. You can, but it will cost you in the long run. So before we get
get to the point where we just say, well, in order to appease people, we're going to start cutting things. It doesn't work quite like that. I wish it did. And I don't think that citizen area of Jacksonville would want us just to say, okay, we need money, we're going to cut this service because we don't want to raise money, whatever that is. So, to answer the question, it would have to be, you have to really prioritize through a plan, what are you trying to achieve?
So what specific item would you target? I mean, are we going to target trying to, say, lower property tax to bring more local businesses in, to provide more funding to the community? I mean, like, what is the solution? You know, we can all recognize there's a problem.
Okay, I will tell you this. What I would target is education. And the reason I say that, if you know anything about businesses coming into Jacksonville, you want to talk about raising wages. We have 3 colleges, we have 2 colleges, and we have a community college here. But when a business comes to Jacksonville of any magnitude with 50, 60 to 100 or 200 people, one of the things they look for right off the bat is an educated environment. And if they can't find people in your city to take those jobs that are now becoming high-tech jobs, they don't come here. And we can't give them land in order for them to come here and waste their time. So what I would say is that we need to start looking at education and educating our citizen area more so they can get jobs that are going to give them higher salaries and bring businesses in here that we can attract. And anybody in education in here that's been in education for a while knows exactly what I'm talking about, having an educated environment. And right now, we're falling short of that. So that's what I was talking about.
I agree, but, you know, the colleges we have right here now are soft skill colleges. They're not just providing the training for these higher level institutes and technology needs overall.
Well, I think we'll go ahead, you can discuss after, we'll go ahead. Yeah, I mean, Tony, I think a lot of the themes I've heard here, sense of community, working together, whether it be Jacksonville and South Jacksonville. You know, not having Chris out here on limb and Stacy there or any of the aldermen. Try to identify those common issues and problems that can be systemic, but a sense of community and pride in the community. And I know that, you know, working with the people in your ward, that's what it's all about. And to recognize there are some groups that are in poverty and don't have certain things. But again, just working together, I think it works. And education, you know, the community, the sense of community policing, those type of things where you just don't have an officer come in where there's problems. You have education and you have a positive interaction with people in your community, in your district. And not just show up, you know, which they do very diligently, but have that sense of community and pride in your home, pride in your neighborhood, and pride in your community is what, to me, it's all about. Okay. All right. Any other quick questions? I know we're kind of running over a little bit, but okay. Well, thank you. I want to thank all